Well, again, thank you very much for staying with us here on The Real Story. The November election feels far away, but campaigning has already kicked off, and Connecticut's 5 House seats will once again be up for grabs.
Freshman Congresswoman Jahana Hayes has made her mark in Congress. There's no doubt about that. And she will no doubt hope to keep her seat. But this morning, we are meeting one of her challengers. Republican David Sullivan is hoping to be the next congressional leader in the 5th District. And he's not a stranger to public service. For 30 years, he was a federal prosecutor right here in Connecticut.
And you're not the first federal prosecutor or a prosecutor of any stripe who's done this, gone to elective office. What caused you to make the decision? Well, I enjoyed my career at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I tell people I'm a career public servant, not a career politician. And I felt this was the time to do this because, quite frankly, I'm concerned about the direction of the country, the direction of the district, and the direction of our state. Why, in what way are you concerned? Well, let's start with, you don't hear anyone saying, when I retire, I'm moving to Connecticut. Connecticut taxpayers have been overburdened, whether it's the state, and you just were talking about tolls earlier, but you know, we have high property tax, high state taxes. We can't compete with many other states. The president and this administration has implemented tax cuts, middle class tax cuts. Others are to be introduced next year in the next session. I'd like to be a part of that. They've been working. We have one of the most robust, if not the most robust economy we've had in 50 years, unemployment down to 3.5%. But you get a lot of people who say the tax cuts aren't working for me, they're working for the rich people. Well, that's the problem. And that's technically not true. You know, the Wall Street Journal came out with a story a week ago saying the lower 25% of wage earners in the country have benefited the most. And it's been actually the higher wage earners that have not. So, you know, it's something, unfortunately, Connecticut's not sharing in this economy, and that's a problem. I tell people in the 41 towns, we have a simple math problem. 5 + 2 = 1. We have 5 Democrat congressmen, 2 Democrat senators, 1 voice in Washington. And if that voice is going anywhere, it's moving farther and farther to the left. 4 years ago, Nancy Pelosi was the liberal face of the Democratic Party. Now she's the moderate voice of the Democratic Party. Progressive socialism is moving in rampantly. Jahana Hayes supports Medicare for all. That would be giving 19% of our economy to the federal government. And that's a frightening statistic. What do you think about the impeachment trial? I mean, as a congressional candidate and as a former federal prosecutor. Well, I've been teaching trial practice at the Yale Law School since 1996, and I've taught at the Department of Justice and taught at the International Law Enforcement Academy of South and Central American judges, prosecutors, and law enforcement. And I can tell you, first day of the opening statements when the Democrats are seeking 11 amendments, all of which failed, and they're seeking to subpoena documentation, the time for discovery is over. This is the trial. They had that opportunity in the House Intelligence Committee. But you'll have people say, well, they couldn't get any of the witnesses because the president wouldn't allow them to testify. Well, let's go back a little bit, and then we'll come back to that statement. We had a 22-month Mueller investigation. Over 500 witnesses interviewed, 1.5 million pages of documentation provided by the White House, 2,800 subpoenas issued, 40 FBI agents working with 19 federal prosecutors. My students at the University of New Haven in a graduate national security program have read the Mueller report. Where is the Mueller report today with the 2 articles of impeachment? They're simply not there. Now, with respect to honoring congressional subpoenas, well, it would have been really nice if the House had decided to go to the 3rd co-equal branch of government, the courts, to enforce their subpoenas. They chose not to because they felt the need to rush this. Well, they rushed it right up until the time that they held it for 30 days. So it's very problematic, and what I'm here. Oh, I'm sorry. No, keep going. Based on what was presented so far and what you've read, would you have voted for an impeachment trial to proceed? I would not have voted for the impeachment trial. And I think at this point, I liken it, it's analogous to a Rule 29 motion for directed verdict, acquittal as a matter of law, because you have the government, and in this case, the managers, have to present a case in which they make you know, their case to the extent that we go forward with some type of defense. They've really failed to do that. Nobody can articulate a high crime or misdemeanor. You know, what is obstruction of Congress? That could have been remedied by going to the courts. What is abuse of power? What happened to bribery? What happened to quid pro quo? What happened to everything else that they've been throwing? Maxine Waters, from the day this president took the oath, was screaming resistance and impeachment. In November of 2018, Jerry Nadler, the Judiciary Committee chairman, was overheard on a train going back to New York saying, I should be the one handling the impeachment hearings as Judiciary Chair. And that was long before this July call with, President Zelensky.
What do you think about the call? Do you think that he stayed within the bounds?
Well, you have to remember, there are probably about 15 other people listening to that call. I don't think it was a perfect call, because a perfect call would be not be subject to this type of scrutiny, but it was within the bounds. And Jay Johnson, President Obama's former DHS secretary, Alan Dershowitz, many others have said, no, this was proper. And it's the way this president speaks. It's not the way we all speak, but it's not a high crime or misdemeanor. And today, 21 state attorney generals sent a message to the Senate saying, this needs to stop. This is something that is extreme. You should not weaponize Article 1, Section 2, the impeachment process. And, I'm coming up here tonight and I'm hearing that all these senators are walking in and out of the proceedings, these statements. And, if it's that important, why aren't they sitting in the room? So I think that this is going to come to a conclusion soon, and I don't see the president being removed.
Well, good luck in your campaign.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
We'll be watching with great interest, actually,
sure.
Because you have certainly support, I noticed, from Themis Claridis.
A good friend, many
the
years.
House Minority
Powerful
Leader,
Republican in the state.
legislature.
Someone who's fighting tolls and doing a great job doing
fighting
it. Yes.
tolls. All right, we've run out of time, but we really appreciate you
My
coming on
pleasure.
and talking with us. And don't forget, if you missed something on The Real Story, you can watch it by going online, fox61.com.
We do thank you for watching this week's edition of The Real Story, and we'll be back here for you next week.
Have a great morning.